Another day of protests in Atlanta after the shooting death of Rayshard Brooks late Friday night.
There's no justice that can ever make me feel happy about what's been done.
No one walking this green earth expects to be shot and killed like trash in the street for falling asleep in a drive-thru.
Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe, a 7-year veteran, has been fired. Devin Brosnan, with less than 2 years of experience, has been placed on administrative leave. The question now is, will there be criminal charges?
I don't want anyone in any circumstances to rush to any form of judgment.
A combination of available video, including police body cameras, shows Officer Brosnan approach Rayshard Brooks, who's asleep in his car in an Atlanta Wendy's drive-thru line just after 10:40 p.m.
What's up, my man? Hey. Come in. Hey.
Officer Brosnan wakes Brooks up and asks him to move his car to a parking spot. A few minutes later, Officer Rolfe is on the scene, starting to question Brooks.
Your Honor, I just got something to eat. I went to visit my mother's gravesite. I'm not causing any problems.
Brooks is given a breathalyzer.
Just take a deep breath in, put your mouth over the mouthpiece, blow as hard as you can until I tell you to stop. Blah, 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 stop.
The officers then give Brooks a number of other field sobriety tests, and at this point, Brooks is doing everything he's told to do.
3, 4, 5.
Asking if he can just walk home.
I can walk home. I don't have to park. The car's legit.
Why would you walk home?
I just don't want to be in violation of anybody. I can walk. My sister's house is right here.
Then everything changes when the officers decide to take Brooks into custody.
I think you've had too much to drink to be driving. Put your hands behind your back for me. Here, put your hands behind your back. Hey, stop fighting!
As Brooks begins to fight, there's a struggle over Officer Brosnan's taser.
You're gonna get tased!
Brooks wrestles the taser away and breaks free. Officer Rolfe gives chase with his taser in his right hand, but then, watch, he switches the taser to his left and draws his gun. Meanwhile, Brooks, while running, turns back and fires the taser he took from Brosnan at Officer Rolfe. Seconds later, Rolfe fires his handgun and Brooks falls to the ground. Brooks was taken to the hospital but died during surgery.
We want to be very, very quick in this case, but we have to be very thorough in this case. We have to do it the right way.
Even though he had had something to drink, he was polite. He was using sir. He was conducted a 20 to 30 minute sobriety test, did the leg stand, did everything possible. And it should have ended when he said simply, "Can I walk to my sister's house? I'll lock my car up." It should have ended right there.
Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields resigned in the wake of the shooting. 6 Atlanta police officers were recently charged for tasing and pulling 2 college students out of a car during a recent protest. Civil rights attorney Malawi Davis represents those students. What does he think will happen to Officer Rolfe in this case?
Mr. Brooks did not have a firearm. Mr. Brooks was intoxicated. Mr. Brooks was running away, and the shots were fired into his back. Based on that, I believe that charges should be brought against him and he should be arrested by the district attorney's office in Fulton County.
All right, Ted Rollins joins us now for more on this story. Ted, let's start first with charges. The district attorney is the one who has to make the call here. What have we heard from the DA?
Paul Howard is the DA in Fulton County, and he expects to make that decision sometime midweek this week. He is a guy that is very meticulous. He makes decisions in his office, so it's going to be up to him.
And, I mean, I've heard the potential that the consideration of felony murder is potentially on the table here. Have you heard anything?
Potentially, but difficult to assume you're going to get a successful prosecution. Let's face it, this case is a little bit different in that there are some extenuating circumstances. It's going to be fascinating to watch this play out, see how aggressive, if you will, the DA in Fulton County will be in this case against two Atlanta police officers.
Absolutely. And one of them, he's fired already. The second is on administrative leave. The one who fired the weapon is the one who got terminated. How about the family? Today they were speaking out. What is the family talking about?
Yeah, well, we've seen so much of this, and it was heartbreaking. Today, there were over 1,000 people that came out for another protest, very peaceful. 20 plus family members, cousins, aunts, uncles, and loved ones were part of this, and it was extremely emotional near the state capitol of Atlanta where this took place, basically saying, we want this resolved, we want change, and we also want peace. They urged people to protest, but do it peacefully, because they wanted the lasting impression to be just like his personality, and that was peaceful.
Yeah, this thing that's striking about the video is how it turned. It just turned. Everything was, I mean, back and forth. It was very under control. It seemed like investigators or the police were doing their investigation. And based upon whatever they observed, they believed there was enough for an arrest for driving under the influence, which means you're in your car and you're over the legal limit, or in the belief of the officers, under the influence. And then it just turned. Has there been any explanation, or has anyone talking about why all of a sudden it just went from both sides seemed to be understanding the situation to all of a sudden it was a wild fight and chase?
Yeah, well, it was clearly a split-second decision Rayshard Brooks made, because he was answering every question with yes, sir, absolutely. He was as cordial as you could be. A guy wakes up in the Wendy's drive-through. Obviously, there's indication that he's under the influence. He blew that breathalyzer. That came out as a 0.1, so just over the legal limit in Georgia, which is 0.08. To operate a motor vehicle. So the officers were technically right. He was over the legal limit and should not have been driving. So that decision to take him into custody, you can't argue it. That split-second decision, though, on his part to flee, obviously, we don't know what happened in his mind, because like you point out, he couldn't have been more accommodating, if you will, as he was dealing with these officers.
Right. And this, as a former prosecutor, and I handle a lot of these DUI cases, I mean, the world of DUI changed years ago. There was a time where officers would give you a break, give you a ride home. They don't do that anymore. They don't do that anymore. There's too much liability on the part of the officers that if you don't arrest a drunk driver, that now it's on you. Like, let's say, for instance, you give that drunk driver a ride home, that drunk driver gets into another car or comes back to the car and drives and kills somebody, then everybody's going after the police. And I've seen that. People go after the police. So if you're over the legal limit, police are pretty much, you have to. Those days are over. We're not driving people home or dropping them off, giving them a break, or driving drunk anymore. Mothers Against Drunk Driving won't have it, and for good reason.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is people are saying, well, why didn't you just let him walk to his sister's house? And to your point, it's more difficult than that. If the officers see that he blew a 0.1, they know he's over the limit. And to your point, yeah, they wanted to protect themselves. Obviously, if they could go back, they would have probably let him walk to his sister's house. Because the other part of the equation here, Vinny, is no one had any idea. These officers, you watch this video, there's no indication that he's going to flee and then grab a taser. It just blew out of control in a millisecond.